Hi and welcome to Terry Travels. I'm just doing a little bit of an extra video here. I finished a video for my Patreon supporters and I'm still cruising around, driving around Williamstown. And so I thought I would do a little bit of an extra video for Terry Travels as well. By the way, if you're not a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies, you never see that other video because it's only for them. And I thought I would give them a little bit extra. We're now heading towards the Hobson's Bay Power Station and the Westgate Bridge, by the way. Beautifully sunny afternoon, but it's also cold out there. Cold for me, not cold for necessarily people who live somewhere in the northern hemisphere on a land mass closely attached to a pole. But for us here, it's cold weather. What's it say? It says 15, but if you get outside, there's a bit of a wind chill as well. And so I'm rocked up here, and I am going to just meander around this area and show you a little bit of Williamstown and Newport and those areas, because I've got about half an hour to kill before I need to pick up middle-aged geek girl for an appointment. And it's always good to use that time to do things. By the way, I've got a new camera rig that you're now looking through, which is attached to the windshield by a suction cup that you could remove with 17 elephants. I bought the cheap one before, which is the one I used in my last video on the channel. And it kept falling off the windscreen, which of course leaves the possibility of damaging the camera, which is quite expensive. And so I actually bought an upgrade and got myself a much stronger camera rig to attach to the windscreen for driving vlogs. The lesson, of course, there is don't go cheap when you're buying equipment, particularly if it's supporting other equipment, which is quite expensive. So this is a much more sturdy camera rig, and I'm happy with it so far. And if it falls off the windscreen, I may well cry on camera. But hopefully it won't, because it does seem to be very securely attached. So, how's everybody doing? I'm not going to even go to talk about politics or anything else in this one. We're heading now into the industrial areas of inner western Melbourne. And the Westgate Bridge is the big bridge up ahead, which spans the Yarra River, which divides Melbourne down the middle. And it when they were building that bridge, by the way, they were finishing construction. They had the main roadway done. And then the centre spans collapsed. And people died and cars fell off there and all that kind of thing. And so they had to build stronger, and they had to put the little towers up to support cabling because it didn't work. And which is the reason my mother-in-law will never drive across the Westgate Bridge. But just down here on the right, which you can't see, there is a little wharf. And on weekends, you can actually take a punt across the river. If you're on bicycle, you take your bicycle with you and do a long bike ride. But there's a punt that goes across the mouth of the Yarra River. And immediately left is a Science Works, which is a science museum. But yeah, I haven't taken that trip yet. I really should do it for the channel. But we're now going to pass under the Westgate Bridge and head into Newport and Footscray and the industrial areas. Footscray and Newport are being gentrified a lot too. They're really turning into quite nice little communities of what used to be workers' cottages, but are now cute little renovated houses for fairly wealthy people. And I still know some working class people that live around that area. I know someone in Set who's a train driver, for instance. But all of these areas are now getting gentrified. Are things gentrified where you are? Are there any areas that you used to like that are now being gentrified to the point where you A, couldn't live there, and B, kind of resent the fact that they're being gentrified? I get that as well. Mostly in my hometown of Sydney, where places like Glebe and Newtown, where I lived in the past, have now become so crazily expensive that the price of a house now looks like a lottery win. And I kind of resent that. I think one of the worst things that can happen to any city anywhere, and I'm going to have a drink of water now, is that they become gentrified. And I'm going to swing the camera now. Let's say you can look at me. Is that me there? Yeah, it's me. Yeah, and real estate agents are the worst thing for any city because of course, their job is to buy and sell things. But they buy and sell things that are homes that are bottom line of people's anchoring in civilization. And so things get increasingly expensive because the real estate agents tell people they're worth more, and we end up with a situation where people can't afford to rent near where they work, people can't afford to rent near where their kids go to school and university, or buy near those places either. I said I wasn't going to get political, but inevitably I am. And that cheeses me off. I'm not a fan of capitalism particularly. And yes, I have lived in it all my life, so I know a bit about what I'm saying. I still like the places. I love places like Spotswood and Yarraville, where the Sun Theatre is, and all of those places. I really like them a lot. But I'm keenly aware as well that they are very expensive places to live. And I find that unfortunate. And what that tends to mean, where I live, is that overall they become kind of monocultural. And the people who live there tend to be somewhat pale of complexion. And so you end up with ghettos of white privilege. Now, that isn't universally the case. It's only in some places. There are also places like Footscray nearby, which has a very large Vietnamese population, a large Asian population. But if you go one or two suburbs over, there's a lot of wealthier, university-educated white people living mostly in those places. I still like these places. There's a lot of history in them as well. I mean, Australia's a place that has 60,000 years plus of human history, but most of it we know nothing about because it was wiped out when people from that little island off the shore of Europe colonized the country, which is a terrible pity, but it happened. I've benefited from it as much as anybody else. Well, not as much as anybody else, but I have benefited from it. We don't know enough of the first 59,800 years of that history because it's been wiped out. And it wasn't history in a form particularly that was written down. There was no writing in Indigenous cultures. There were bark paintings, there were cave paintings, there were oral histories and songlines. But they weren't as accessible as somebody writing a book. And so the history that we have here in Australia and the history that we speak about mostly is the history since white colonisation. And I'm going to turn the camera back now that I'm at a stoplight so you can see out the front again. There we go. So we're just heading back towards Williamstown, which is where I started out. But yeah, I feel conflicted about the places I live in and the history of where I am. And some people can say it's white guilt, but I don't think it is. I think it's acknowledgement of how complex the history and the philosophies behind that history and the places that white people live in, where it's not the places where white people came from. It's a complex thing, but I think an acknowledgement of its important. So yeah, traffic's starting to get increasingly heavy because peak hours starting to hit. And I really wish we had better public transport. We have okay public transport, but we don't have great. I mean, I've seen some of the best in the world. I've seen the public transport in Japan, where trains do such a fantastic job of keeping cars off the roads. I'm big in favour of that. If we had a really big, extensive train network throughout Melbourne, I'd be much happier. Of course, train vlogging is a lot harder than it is drive vlogging, I suppose. So that doesn't necessarily mean great things for this channel were it to happen. And it would take a very long time for it to happen if it did. Now, I kind of like where this channel is going, by the way. I should mention that. The channel is slowly gaining ground. Of course, it does take a long time for the channel to build up its subscriber base and I don't want to be in this lane. Done that wrong. I want to be there. And occasionally that happens with me. It's starting to grow. It's starting to get more views and things like that. And that's kind of cool. It feels a bit like when I started Terry Talks Movies, the other channel, and every single subscriber meant so much, and still does. But when you don't have a large subscriber base, every single comment and every single subscriber has an enhanced importance to you as a person running the channel than a person creating the channel. Now we're going under the freeway and heading to Williamstown. This is the freeway that goes into Melbourne. And there are going to be tunnels going under the Yarra River to take people to Melbourne as well. They're just building them now, but they're not quite finished yet. And when they are, I'm going to do a driving vlog through those tunnels, and it'll be very cool. But what was I saying? And I'm rambling here because driving vlogs lend themselves to ramble. Yeah, so the small channel is a nice thing to start up again and to build up from. And I do want to get this channel to the stage where it is quite large. And if I can get it monetized, and monetization on YouTube means you need to have 14,000 hours over 1 year of viewing and at least 1,000 subscribers. We're heading in the right direction, but I'm nowhere near there yet. And I want to get to the stage where if I decide to take a long trip on a train, I can finance that with the channel. That's the ultimate goal for this stock and the way I want things to happen. And I can show you people more and more interesting things if the channel grows and if the channel enables me to go other places. And it will. My next video, by the way, I'll be up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. I've got a morning to myself. And I may take you up into the Dandenong Ranges, which is kind of photogenic, kind of interesting. And so we'll do a bit of that just for the fun of it in the next video. But I'll finish this one here. All the usual things. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm next doing a video. None of that stuff costs you anything. And you can also support the channel by going to the Patreon I've got for both channels. Patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Going to be more videos. I'm not stopping this anytime soon. So if you do support the channel, it's not going to suddenly disappear and you're out of pocket. And until then, I will catch you guys later. And I'm going to do a little bit of a speed ramp here as I do the outro. And you can watch the next couple of kilometers of me driving.